All right. Welcome to my next share sip with my guest Tanya from Kaveri Coffee. So we're gonna do something a little bit different. It's gonna be exciting. We are going to taste coffee instead of wine. But at the end, we're gonna talk about the similarities of coffee and wine. So I'm really excited. She's a coffee. You're titled coffee roaster. Coffee roaster. She's the owner of the company. She's amazing. So, well, cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for having me on your
Of course.
show.
Thanks for meeting with me. The coffee, I know you can't smell through the screen, but it smells amazing and it tastes delicious. It's nice and smooth.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so let's get to know Tanya and see how she ended up in this business.
Yeah.
All right, so tell us a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
So coffee has been, I grew up with coffee. I grew up in India, and in South India, there is a large coffee culture and a coffee growing region. Most people think of tea when they think of India, but we have quite a large coffee growing region and export as well.
Okay.
So my grandfather and my father, they were both coffee roasters and wholesale coffee traders in
Okay.
India, and they did mainly, business locally. So buying coffee and selling it to local restaurants, or just roasting the coffee and selling it directly to customers. And that business was started in the early 40s.
Okay.
And went on till my dad passed away in 2010.
Okay.
And there was no, talk of the passing the tradition and the business over to the next generation, because my sister and I came to the U.S. In our late teens, early 20s to pursue higher education and different opportunities here.
Awesome.
But 2 years ago, in 2019, I was looking to do something on my own, start my own business. Something that my dad always inspired me to do, because he was always a business person and never worked for anybody else. So I was looking for something to do of my own, and kind of toyed with a lot of different ideas. And I came to find out that my dad's partner, who we had sold our business to, passed away as well. And so there was this question of whether, we would be interested in taking back the business and running it, but it didn't seem to make sense, because it was all the way in India and it was local market. So I started researching. I was working on my business ideas and plans in cafes around the East Bay. And I just didn't see any coffee from India at these cafes. And they were, so it kind of like lit a light bulb. And I was like, what's the scene here? Do you even get Indian coffee here? And, can that be something I could do? Because that's so much, part of my family history and my roots. And so that's how Kaveri Coffee was born.
That's awesome. I love that story. Did you ever work with your dad and grandpa, like, while you were growing up?
No.
So this is all new.
This is all new. So
Except
I learned everything I know about coffee roasting, tasting, and everything, brewing here in the U.S. just 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
But it kind of all seemed so familiar. It seemed so natural, because it just brought back memories of me sitting on my dad's lap as a kid and just inhaling that smell of coffee. And then I used to go to the coffee shop and the roastery and hang out there and do my homework, and or just spend some summer holidays just spending time with dad at work. So it was all very familiar. And as the coffee wave changed here in the U.S., and you have these roasteries with a cafe in them. So I would go to these cafes and be like, oh my God, this takes me back to home.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe a little taste of home.
Exactly.
That's cool. Since you mentioned that when you weren't seeing Indian coffee, I don't see it. So, but did you do the research to see if there's any, like, a lot?
Yeah. So India exports about 80% of the coffee grown worldwide. And as a coffee growing country, it's sixth or seventh sort of largest coffee producer.
Okay, wow.
Kind of tied in place with Honduras as the sixth or seventh, depending on the year.
Okay.
And so that was my first question, is like, where is this 80% of coffee going? And I learned that it was mainly to Europe and Russia. And my guess was maybe it was more traditional, trade routes. And about 5% of the coffee imported into, because US is the number one or number two consumer and importer of coffee.
Okay.
So it's up there, right? Like, we all love coffee here. And so I discovered that it's only 5% of the coffee being imported is Indian coffee. And I don't know all the reasons for it, but my guess is India, especially for the port of Oakland or even Seattle, where the specialty coffee industry is bigger and more thriving, is literally the exact opposite side of the world. It's like completely 180 degrees. So it's a far distance to be bringing coffee over to India. So it could be time, cost, even just interest in how it's marketed here. And the coffee that I've seen a few different roasters that do kind of offer Indian coffee as a selection in their worldwide offering of coffee from around the world, and they have India. There's very few that specialize in Indian coffee. There's a coffee wholesaler, importer, and roaster here in the peninsula that specializes in Indian coffee. But other than that, it's all like the worldwide offering, and India is one of them. But it's not highlighted, and maybe it's just because nobody has had that interest to do so. So I'm like, me, I have the interest, I'll do it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now we're talking like the unique thing about Indian coffee. So you went to a lot of coffee shops. There's a lot of coffee shops here, and a lot of like cool, the roasteries and all that.
Yeah.
What makes your brand unique?
Yeah. So Indian coffee, not a lot of people may know, but it's often blended into other coffees, especially espresso blends. Just the kind of the nature or the characteristics of Indian coffee is low acidity and
a wine term too.
Yeah, low acidity and really big body. And so when you're making espresso drinks, many times espresso drinks are mixed with milk or milk type substitutes, and so you need that body to kind of like hold the milk and still maintain the flavor of the coffee. And what I like to specialize in is just doing single estate coffees. So in India, coffee farms are called estates or plantations. And so these are all Arabica coffees. That's a variety of coffee which is known for its better quality in terms of taste quality. So I do a single origin. So origin is India, and single estate. So it's direct from farm to cup. So what you're tasting here is this coffee. It's called, it's from the Kerkikunda estate. It's a mouthful, but
I won't try to say it.
But the family that owns and produces here is the Maman family. And they have been owning and producing coffee at this farm for 3 generations. And so coffee from India, coffee has been cultivated in India since like the late 17th century. And it's the 3rd country in the world after Ethiopia and Yemen to start the cultivation of coffee for consumption. So it has a long history, and over the years they have come up with different varieties and hybrids and processing methods and harvesting methods to improve the quality of coffee and also make it more robust and resistant to leaf rust, which is the biggest threat in terms of kind of crop degradation and stuff. So the unique thing I would say is I'm offering farm to cup coffee. That's and awesome. I'm offering a variety of farms. So my family, didn't own any of these farms, but I'm offering a collection of different farms. And
in
so
southern India, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it happens to be southern India because that's what's
Really?
been important
Okay.
here. I haven't had a chance yet to go there and establish relationships myself.
Okay.
Pandemic.
Yeah.
But you have I have 3 different single estate coffees right now, and they're each roasted to a different level, highlighting different flavors of the coffee. So the undertone flavor is primary flavor notes are always chocolate.
Mhm.
So, and depending on how you roast it, it could be milk chocolate, baker's chocolate, bittersweet, dark chocolate. There's all these different like variations. And then coffee in India is grown with other fruits and spices. So all of that, add to the soil and add to the flavor of the coffee.
Mhm.
So you could taste a little bit of fruits like orange, apple, and also some spices like cardamom.
Okay.
And this is where it's very similar to wine, where none of these flavors are added to the coffee in the roasting process or brewing process. It's really the craft of the roaster in how they roast it to bring out these flavors that are inherent in the coffee bean.
Yeah, like kind of the versus like stainless steel versus oak, and what kind of oak you use, and then where it's grown, and like the climate at that time and all that stuff.
Exactly.
It's very actually that whole conversation. I'm like, there's so much similarity. In coffee and wine.
And there could be different roasters that get the same green coffee, right? Green coffee is the raw coffee before it's roasted.
Okay.
And the machine they use to roast and how they roast it can end up, the end result can be totally different.
That's cool.
So I roast in a cast iron drum roaster.
Okay.
And it has its own sort of like characteristics that it adds to the.
Do they have like a characteristic that is typical for like the drum roaster?
Not necessarily, because I've had to switch between a drum and a steel, a stainless steel.
Okay.
And you've got to, so when I'm roasting, I'm kind of, it's called a roast profile or like your roast recipe.
Okay.
So this is what I'm aiming to get out of the coffee at the end of the roast process.
Okay.
And so depending on the temperature of the day and the humidity, I would tweak my recipe to sort of get that same end result. And so that's another sort of quality of current day roasting. It's call it the 3rd wave or 4th wave coffee culture, where you pay attention to all these nuances because you're expecting the same kind of tasting coffee every single time you roast.
Okay. That's where maybe the difference with the wine. Because every year could be different.
Right.
Yeah.
That is also applies to this coffee. So in the back label, I have these things called, the region where it grows, the altitude at where it grows, the variety, and then the processing. This is after the coffee cherries are picked, what processing it goes through to, get that green bean. And the biggest variant for any agricultural crop is weather, right? Yeah. So every year there's a difference in the rainfall and the sunshine and, all of these different variables that the green coffee ends up being different each year. So, for this year's or the past year's harvest, I have this set of tasting notes, which is peanut brittle, malt chocolate, and citrus. And I don't know if you would taste any of those. Sometimes my palate is just not refined enough to be
I tasted peanut, a little bit.
There you go. Cool.
And I mean, chocolate, I think is just common.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The citrus I don't have yet, but I'm working on my tasting notes with wine too.
Yeah, and that citrus note, they call it the finish. So it's sort of like after you swallow, kind of what feeling you're left with. Okay. So if it's kind of refreshing, or it's also talks about, acidity. So this coffee is roasted on the lighter side of medium. So I stop the roast just when these citric acids are burning off. And so you would have a little kind of like bite to it, or afterwards you sip and say, oh, I lost that sweetness, it's a little kind of the way I describe it, I'm like, ooh, this kind of perks me up.
Okay.
That's how I
I like it though.
associate
Simple.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's
yeah.
awesome.
So yeah, those are the different kind of and then altitude, what it matters is
Right.
how it matters is that higher the altitude, the kind of richness of soil and the quality of coffee improves.
Okay.
And there's two main varieties of coffee, Arabica and Robusta. Arabica is known to have a more refined and superior taste, and is more coveted in like the specialty coffee industry. And Robusta, but Arabica grows at higher altitude. It's more susceptible to bugs and disease. Robusta is another variety or branch of the coffee genus that is more leaf resistant, higher in caffeine, but not as good tasting. So if you were to sip Robusta, you wouldn't really be able to enjoy it black as much.
Yeah, to have milk in it.
Yeah. And so often, those are blended together. And in the current kind of third wave culture, everyone's more focused on the Arabica variety and trying to highlight the different regions and how they, how the flavors change.
Okay.
Yeah, based on the region.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That whole conversation, I feel like, because my next question is going to be, let's compare the coffee to the wine. But just from that conversation, there was so much that you could get, like, just the farming in general is very similar. Like, you, in harvest time for wine, like, you have to, certain times are better to pick the grapes. Like, it could be 4 a.m., it could be at night, it could be in the middle of the day.
Right.
And harvest the timing changes every year because of the weather.
Yes.
And then you talked about acidity, and like the body, and the blending was cool because a lot of winemakers, that's their like best part. Because you're making your product, like so there's so much similarities between coffee and wine, which is really fun.
I'd say the two main differences is that with wine, as the wine ages, sometimes it tastes better. It kind of blooms and like you get to enjoy it more. It's the opposite for coffee. So coffee has more of a shelf life, and that shelf life changes depending on where along the process you are.
What is the average shelf life?
So green coffee, they say, is the best, or the kind of freshest shelf life is about a year from harvest. That can be extended depending on how well you store it. So there are different, ways to store green coffee in warehouses, maintaining certain temperatures, the way you bag them.
Similar to wine too.
Exactly. Yeah. And then once roasted, the shelf life kind of significantly decreases. So whole bean coffee has the greatest shelf life, and that could be anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months, depending on who you ask. There's a wide variety of like opinions on that, and again, it's how you store it also matters. So you can freeze whole bean coffee, and it does extend its shelf life, but when you use it, you shouldn't thaw all of it. You just have to take out whatever you want and grind it immediately. And then ground coffee has the least amount of shelf life.
Like when you open a bottle of wine.
Yes. Drink it soon.
Yeah.
Quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. And what was the second one?
The second one is, so with wine, or at least can be with wine, that most of the times the person that grows the grapes, harvests it, and makes the bottle of wine is all one person. And primarily, like, that's kind of they see the process from beginning to end. Whereas with coffee, it's rarely like that. It's usually the farmers take care of the growing and harvesting, and then the green coffee is purchased and dispersed to a wide range of people. It typically goes to roasters, whether it's big commercial roasters or more specialized small batch roasters, and then the roaster themselves add their kind of art and craft to it. Which, and then is the barista. Barista plays an important role. Very important.
I know. I used to be a barista, and now I can't even watch them make my drink anymore.
Right.
I have to go away. So
Yeah.
I like don't know how they meant it's bad.
Yeah.
I don't want to be one of those customers.
I know.
But I'm paying good money.
Exactly. I know. When I go out, I'll only like ask for a drink that I can't make at home. I don't have an espresso
same.
machine, so
Okay.
that's what I go for.
Yeah, or
Otherwise, I'm like, I can probably do that better myself. So it's so easy to mess up. It's also the most important step because that's the way you enjoy your coffee, right? Everybody loves a good cup of coffee, and so hats off to all the baristas out there working hard and making good coffee.
Those are my favorites, though.
Yeah.
Just don't mess up my coffee. So I thought it was funny. So a lot of people don't know that, like, you know, at Starbucks it's blonde, medium, dark roast.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think that dark roast is like the most caffeinated.
Right.
But it's not.
Correct.
Okay, so the lighter the roasting, which, I mean, if you
explain. So the roast process doesn't change the caffeine level in the coffee. So no matter how you roast it, so just to give context, and this is depending on the machine, but the roast level changes based on to what temperature you roast a coffee. So for example, you know, if you're familiar with baking temperatures, so like a 400 degree roast would be considered a blonde compared to a 450 degree roast, which is a dark roast. And something in between is a medium, right? So like, just think of it as that range. And as I mentioned, the you know, acidity is changing, the flavor is changing along this, and also the mass of the coffee bean. So it's basically water is evaporating and it's going from being plumper to like shrinking in size. So when you have dark roasted coffee and you have to measure 2 tablespoons or 50 grams, your mass of coffee increases and compared to 2 tablespoons of lightly or blonde roasted coffee. So in that sense, you might think that you're getting more coffee or more caffeine in the dark roast, wherein like the difference is so minimal, it doesn't really affect your caffeine level of the drink.
Okay, so blonde is not even that much more caffeine.
No. Myth busted.
Yeah, awesome. So drink what you like.
Yes, exactly. And how you like it too. So if this is a medium light, as I was saying, and I know some of my customers who drink it as an espresso, but I haven't enjoyed it as an espresso as much because it's too acidic and too bright for me. But a darker roasted coffee, I can enjoy it both black and as an espresso because it kind of has that bigger body.
That's all.
And so, yeah, it's just trying to figure out what you like and enjoying.
Just like wine again.
Yes,
exactly. Gotta taste all the different kinds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so tell us like where we could buy your coffee and whatnot.
Sure.
A little more.
So I have an online store. My website is called KaveriCoffee.com.
And I'll link it below.
Great. And you can buy direct. I do free local delivery to some East Bay neighborhoods.
We're in like El Cerrito area.
Yeah.
So that
Berkeley, El Cerrito, some parts of Kensington and Oakland, North Oakland. And I do my roasting all in West Berkeley. And so sort of like the 5-mile radius from there.
Okay, cool.
And then I ship anywhere in the US, and there's free shipping if you order a certain minimum quantity. But I do offer a taster set so you can get to taste all the different coffees I have currently and see which one you like before ordering more.
Oh, awesome.
And then if you're in San Francisco, I offer one of my coffees in bulk at Rainbow Groceries in the Mission District. And in Berkeley, the place where I roast has a cafe as well.
Cool.
It's called the Coro Coffee Room. And that's where I sell my coffee in bags right now.
Awesome.
And looking to expand. So if you have a local coffee shop or grocery store that would be interesting,
hit her up. I'll have all her information below. And it's really good coffee. I'm like, I love coffee.
Thank you.
Awesome. And then anything else you want to mention?
No, it's been a really fun journey for me. I decided to kind of break off from the more traditional work in an office environment, to have flexibility and also to enjoy what I'm doing. I now have a 4-year-old. Back when I started, he was 2, and so it was important for me to do meaningful work and have flexibility to have a work-life balance.
Awesome.
And so this journey has been sort of really incredible, really challenging, not including the whole pandemic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm all for, trying to identify what really makes you happy and going for it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I look forward to your future.
Thanks.
I'm excited. I want to see it everywhere.
Great.
All right. Cheers. Cheers, Tanya.
Cheers. Thank you.